Welcome everybody to the fourth class in this Atma Bodha series. So Atma Bodha is a Prakarana Grantha. It's a text that explains the fundamentals of Vedanta, which is the subtle realm. As usual, we would like to acknowledge Swami Paramarthananda Saraswati for the traditional rendering of Vedanta as it was done for over 1,000 years, starting with Adi Shankaracharya. And also, please ask a lot of questions at the end. Don't feel shy. All questions are valid. So please make a note during class. Sometimes when you write things down, things become clear, and ask questions. We'd like to say a small prayer. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Sada Shiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Salutations to the lineage starting with Lord Sadashiva, with Adi Shankaracharya in the middle, and continuing up to our immediate teacher, Swami Paramarthananda Saraswati. So, in this fourth class, we'll go over what we have covered so far. First, we've seen the introduction, and then Shankaracharya gives an overview, qualifications for the practice, and the whole problem of ignorance. We saw the Maya like a shadow and light like Brahman. And the purpose of this practice is to have dukkha nivritti, to have freedom from suffering. Then in the second, we talked about superimposition. There are anyonya adhyasa, mutual superimposition of the I onto the world and the world onto me. So the two properties get superimposed. And we saw the nature of the world. Third and fourth is what third is the upadhis. We saw the upadhis, the conditioners. And now we are in this fourth portion, which is the solution to the superimposition. So we will go. Okay, so one of the things Shankaracharya says is in the 16th shloka, you have to use discrimination. This is where yoga and all these comes in, to have a mind that is very sharp. So it's like using meditation, threshing. The example he gives us, separate the Atma from the five sheets through discriminative knowledge, like pounding the paddy to separate the rice from the husk. And then we go on to the analysis of the solution to this discrimination. So we think we are the body, the mind, and everything. It's because we are living in such close proximity, but we are not. So this is called Drik Drishya Vivekam. This is, in fact, there's an entire text by Shankaracharya on this Drik Drishya Vivekam. What it means is that separating the witnesser from the witnessed. So the witnesser is the subject. The subject is the one that is witnessing, and the object is the one that is witnessed. So Drik is that which is seeing. Drashta, in the yoga it's called drashta. Drik, drishyam is what is seen. That is the world. And vivekam is the discrimination to separate the two. So with that, we will jump into the 18th shloka. Dehendriya mano buddhihi prakritibhyo vilakshanam tadvritti sakshinam vidyat atmanam rajavatsada. So we briefly seen this in the last class. The king just oversees. So what's the purpose of the king? King just oversees, like that. The Atma doesn't do anything. It's like an electricity principle. It just provides consciousness. So the Atma, this is a very important point. Atma doesn't have any properties, but Atma is of the nature of Sat Chit Anandam. This three words, some people you might be familiar with. Has anybody here heard this three words before? Satchidanandam. Anyone here? No? Okay. Yes, Santosh, you've heard. Okay, great. Um, so Satchidanandam is the three, it's not a property, it's very important. Atma doesn't have any properties, but it is the nature of the Atma. Sat means existence, that which gives sentiency and or anything that makes things, do things. It can be sentiency is in living beings and other things in world in non-sentient beings, which involves the earth going around the sun, gravitational force. Everything is made possible by Atma. So that is Sat, existence. The existence is possible only because of Atma. Sat. Chit means consciousness. It sheds light. That's what we've been seeing. We've been calling the Atma as just consciousness. Sat, Chit. And the third property, it is of the nature of bliss. So the closest you can go is in deep sleep. That's why in deep sleep, when you've slept well, you wake up refreshed. So it is of the nature of Ananda. That's why Anandamaya Kosha, they talk about it. So these are the three, this is the nature of the Atma, Sat Chit Anandam. So the Atma just sees. It is like a king who oversees. The subjects do the work. Even in the body, the Atma oversees. The five pranas, Pancha pranas, they do. It's one prana which divides itself as five and does the work. So at the king's behest, then the minister appoints that minister, this minister, all that, and they all do different tasks. So like that prana in the body, the prana does the work. The king just observes. Now comes the 19th shloka. Vyapriteshvindriyeshvatma vyapari va vivekinam drishyate preshu dhavatsu dhavan nivayata shashi. Okay, the Atma, as I said before, the Atma doesn't do anything. But when it is observed through the active senses, then it looks as though it is doing all the work. Atma, when observed through the functioning of the active senses, appears active like a merchant to the non-discriminating person. And the example, beautiful example that Shankaracharya gives is when the moon moves, moon among moving clouds appears moving. So there's clouds that are moving, right? But it looks as though the moon is moving. The moon doesn't move. Similarly, the Atma doesn't do any work. But when it's observed through the functioning active senses, it appears active. So let us look at the Sanskrit words. Vyapriteshu indriyeshu atma. So vyaprita is one who is engaged or occupied. So vyapriteshu indriyeshu means the active senses. Atma vyapari iva avivekinam. Vyapari means trader. So it looks like an active person. So this it looks as though the Atma is transacting, doing business with the world. Vyapari iva, like a trader, for whom? For the avivekinam, for the non-discriminating person. Okay, avivekinam, non-discriminating person. Drishyate abreshu dhavatsu. So dhavatsu abreshu, in the midst of moving clouds. Drishyate, when in appearance it looks like moving amongst moving clouds. Dhavan iva yata sashi, as the moon appears to move. Dhavan iva sashi means the moon appears to move amongst moving clouds. Dhavatsu abreshu means moving clouds, where it appears, drishyate, it appears like the moon is moving among moving, when the clouds are moving. Okay, so that is the example. But the Atma doesn't do anything. So this is all the superimposition. So this entire thing, Shankaracharya says, the goal to freedom is trying to separate the real I from all these qualities which are imperfect, the body, the senses, they're all imperfect. When you separate yourself from your true pure nature, then you get freedom. So that is the entire notion. The movement of the cloud is superimposed on the actionless moon. Same way the transactions of the senses get superimposed on the actionless Atma. Now, senses, Indriya, I will come to that soon. In the context of yoga, Vedanta, all these philosophies, it doesn't just mean the five senses of cognition. Senses are the gateways through which you interact with the world. So there are five jnanendriyas, which are the senses of cognition: touch, smell, hearing, taste, sight, all this, right? And then there are the karmendriyas. These are the organs of action. This is hand, mouth, the sense of speech, walk, pani, padam, that is foot, then upastha, payu, and upastha, that is the organ of excretion and the organ of reproduction. This is how we interact with the outside world. All these are called indriyas, senses. So there are 10 sense organs. Atma chaitanyam ashritya dehendriya manodiyah svakriyateshu vartante surya lokam yata jana. Depending on the nature of the consciousness of the Atma, the body, the mind, and the intellect engage themselves in their respective activities. Just as the light of the risen sun makes people engage in work. So when the sunlight comes, it's as though everything is poured into action, right? People go out, wake up, do things, and even in a room, all this dust, because of the energy of the sun, everything seems to move up. You see, in a dark room and sunlight falls, dusty dark room, sunlight falls, you'll see all these dust particles seemingly going up. So Atma Chaitanyam Ashritya, depending, Ashritam means taking refuge in. So Atma Chaitanyam Ashritya, depending on the nature of the consciousness of the Atma, Deha, Indriya, Mano, Adiyaha. Deha is the body, Indriya is the senses, Manaha is the mind, Dhi is the intellect. They all Swakriyarteshu vartante. Kriya is action. Swakriya means they engage themselves in their respective activities. How? The examples: Surya alokam yathajana. When the sun has risen, it makes people engage in work. Okay. So it's not Surya Lokam, it is Surya Alokam. Alokam means to just illuminate. When the sun just rises and illuminates everything, then all beings are energized and they go about and do work. So when the sunrise comes, it gives life to people. Sleeping people wake up. Job of the sun is to energize all people. And that alone is the sun's job. What activities people do depends on the type of people. Okay. Farmer may go plow the fields. A carpenter may start working on their wood work, whatever. Function is not determined by the Atma. That's the important thing. The function depends upon the nature of the instrument, the senses and the mind. Electricity does not determine the function. Electricity blesses all instruments, whether they rotate, they get heated up, light, fan, heater, bulb, everything. So just because the electricity is the same, function need not be the same. So just because it's the same consciousness in all of us, we all act differently because we are wired up differently. Dehendriya gunan karmani amale satchidatmani adyastyantya vivekena Gagane Neelatadivat. Those who lack discrimination, avivekena, again the word avivekena. So avivekena is used. Those who lack discrimination superimpose. Atyasya means superimpose on the pure Atma, which is such chit Atmani, which is existence and consciousness. Here he is not using the bliss, Satchid Anandam, right? That Shankaracharya is not using, because here existence and consciousness are what's relevant. So on the Satchid Atma, the Atma which is existence and consciousness, what do they superimpose? The qualities and functions of the body and the senses. Deha Indriya Gunan Karmani. Guna is the quality, karmani are the functions of the body and the senses. Those are superimposed on the Satyat Atmani. And by whom? Adyasyantya avivekena, by those who lack discrimination, just as Gagane Neelatadivat, just as people attribute the blue color to the sky, just like that, uh, the indiscriminate people attribute the functioning and the qualities of the body and the senses on you, the pure Atma. So there is a very famous story in the Bhagavata Purana. So before I go to the story, so I hope the illustration is clear. The blueness, it is not the color of the space, the sky. The sky is colorless, but the qualities and functions like that, the qualities and the functions of the body are superimposed on the Atma. So traditionally, India's name is called Bharat, and that derives its name from a great king who ruled many thousands of years ago, named Bharata. So this Bharata, he was such a great king, and once he retired to the forest when he was old. He was meditating and he was contemplating on the higher nature of the Brahman, and he wanted to give up his life that way. One day when he was meditating, he saw a deer being chased by a lion or a tiger. By a lion, I think, because lions don't like to swim in the water. And this deer was pregnant. So when the deer tried to jump across a stream, it gave birth and the baby fell into the water. And this rishi who was there at the time, Bharata became a rishi, and he saw that and he goes, rescues the deer. And he gets very attached to the deer. He was meditating 20 hours a day. From 20, it came down to 16, to 10, and finally to 2 hours a day, because he was so worried and obsessed with the deer. He just raised it as his own child. And at the time of death, in the Bhagavad Gita also says, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram tam tame veti than vidhi. So at the end, when you're about to die, whatever you think of, whatever is so deep in your desires, that you will become in the next lifetime. That's a general notion that is held, because it is your deep desire, and that will happen. And it may happen, but it may also, you want to become a very rich guy, it will happen. It will also bring a lot of problems with it, so it won't come alone. And there are a lot of very rich people who've committed suicide because they couldn't endure certain things. So it's not necessarily a good thing. So this Bharata, in the next lifetime, because he was thinking so much about the deer, was born as a deer. And he gets further enlightened by spending, this deer lived near an ashram, by spending, because he was in such a good state, he was lucky to be born as a deer near an ashram. And this deer knew, it had a certain cognition. It could understand what the rishis were talking about, and it became even more enlightened. And in the next lifetime, after the deer died, it becomes again as a person called Bharata. And this Bharata was interesting. As a child also, he was just eating and sleeping, not playing, not doing, very lazy. And he was called Jata Bharata as a nickname. It's like a derogative nickname. Jata means inert. So people just call him, hey, oh, Jata Bharata, he's there. So this guy, he's becoming plump, and he would just lie and just sleep or just sit down and just stare at the sky. Nothing he would do. There are many stories with that. Once a bunch of dacoits, they want to perform a human sacrifice to some Ugra Devata, or I think in this case it was Kali. So they seize him and they try to sacrifice him, but then Kali comes and kills all the dacoits. So because he's such an enlightened person. And then once the king, king is lifted on the palanquin, there are 4 bearers on each side, and one of them fell sick. So they were trying to find additional person, and the soldiers saw this plump guy sitting on the roadside. They say, hey, come and lift the king's chariot. So he comes and lifts, but everybody would be going at a certain pace. He would be slow. Sometimes he would move in this way, that way. So the king was feeling uneasy, and he says, you fatso, why are you not holding the palanquin properly? And then Jata Bharata looks at the king and he says, who are you calling a fat person? I am not fat. This body that I have is fat. Then the king realizes, you're talking to an enlightened person. So the king then comes and falls at his feet, and then the king gets enlightened. So the Bharata gives a long discourse on the nature. I am pure. I am not this body. This body is something that I dwell in, but I am the pure, blemishless consciousness. So that is what is talked about here. The qualities and functions of the body are imposed on the Atma, like the color of the reflected sunlight, etc., or the dispersed sunlight is transposed onto the sky. Okay, all right. Now, I told you the senses. When we talk of senses, there is senses of cognition, senses of action. So in yoga, a sense is something with which you use to interact with the outside world. So in yoga and Vedanta, all that is happening only in the mind. Even pleasure, pain, everything is happening only in the mind. The senses are the doorways for you to interact with the external world. Everything happens in the mind. Okay. So there is the senses of cognition, which are called jnanendriyas, and action, karmendriyas. And in this shloka, he talks about the senses, right? So, and previously this shloka is very similar to shloka 15, and also we'll see that in 21 also. In the 15, we saw, due to the closeness with the 5 sheets, the immaculate Atma appears to have borrowed their qualities, like a crystal which appears blue due to the proximity. And we will come to the 21st. The 21st will also be similar. So now Shankaracharya is talking about the Manomaya Kosha and the Pranamaya Kosha. So when you talk about the senses, depending on whether these are the cognition or the action senses, you can either associate it with the Manomaya Kosha, the 5 sheets he talked about in the 15th chapter. Remember, the Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and Anandamaya Kosha. So we saw that in our 3 bodies. These are Annamaya Kosha is the body, which is the result of food. Annam is food, and this body is the result of just food. Then Manomaya Kosha is the mind, and then we have the Pranamaya Kosha, which is the pranic body, then the Vijnanamaya Kosha, intellectual body, and the Anandamaya Kosha, which is the bliss body. So the depending on whether you think of these indriyas as the cognitive indriyas, then he's talking about the Manomaya Kosha, or if it is the organs of action, then it's the Pranamaya Kosha. The prana is the one which provides the energy, the vital energy sheath. Pranamaya Kosha is called the vital energy sheath. It um, helps, it enables the interaction with the world, which includes walk, speech. Walk is speech. Pani is hands. Pada is feet. Payu is the organ of excretion. So apana is the downward moving prana, which helps excretion. Upastha and reproduction. So the karmendriyas function through the prana and so are associated with the pranamaya kosha. So you can interpret it either way. When Shankaracharya here talks about the indriyas, deha indriya, you can interpret it as either the manomaya kosha or the pranamaya kosha, depending on the nature. Okay. Next, moving on. Ajnanatmanasopadhe kartruttvadini chatmani kalpyante bhugate chandre chalanadiyatam basaha. This is another very beautiful example due to the ignorance. See, all these are like gems of an example. Without these examples, it's very difficult to understand. So that's why this text was chosen, Atma Bodha. Even though it's a little Shankaracharya style, he just goes from the top and comes down. He has a unique style, Gambhiram and Prasannam. Whereas in Tattva Bodha, it's very step by step, starting with the body, the mind, and then finally the Atma. It's like a student asking all these questions to his teacher. That's Tattva Bodha style. Shankaracharya has a very nonchalant style. Okay. Due to ignorance, ajnanat, manasopade, that which belongs to the mind, like doership, kartritvadini chatmani, are superimposed on the atma, like doership. Kartritva adini. Adini means etc. Kartritvam is doership. That which atmani. Atmani means that which belongs to the mind. So due to ignorance, that which belongs to the mind, like doerships, upade, are superimposed on the atma, on the atmani. Manasa upade, the upade of we saw what is a upadi, right? Anybody, can you tell me what a upadi is? Anyone? Yeah, Amy. Yeah.
It's a conditioner.
Yes, it's a conditioner. So the technical term, it's called a limiting adjunct. It's a condition, means it transfers its properties, like the body transferring its properties on you. When you say, I am smart, I am thin, I am good looking, it is, you are nothing. It's as though that thing which is good looking is just the body. That is transferring the property. Yeah. So, manaso upade kalpyante. And the example he gives is ambugate chandre chalanadi yata ambasaha, the tremblings of water, the chalanadi ambasaha. Chalanam means movement. So here it refers to the tremblings of the water. Chalan adi, like adi means etc., like the tremblings of the water, etc., are attributed to the ambugate chandre. Ambugate chandre means ambas is water. Ambugate, like the moon which is reflected on the water. So the qualities of the water, like the tremblings, are attributed to the moon. So the moon looks as though it is trembling, but the moon is just as it is. There's nothing happening. It's as though the moon is shaky and all that, but it's not happening. It is the quality of the water which is attributed to the moon. Similarly, the quality of the mind, even so, you are not the mind. The mind is an essential tool. You have to take good care of it, but you are not the mind. So the previous shloka covered the Annamaya and the Pranamaya koshas. This shloka covers the Manomaya kosha. So we are seeing all his, now Shankaracharya is talking about the various koshas. There's an abnormality in Atma Bodha. Normally, raga, dvesha, etc. are in the Manomaya kosha, and the kartrutvadini, the sense of doership, is usually associated with the Vijnanamaya kosha, which is the intellect. I am the doer. So when you say I am the doer, also there's an intellectual thing going on, whereas emotions, desire, aversion, these are all emotions. These are associated with the mind, because mind is mind kosha. That's the Manomaya kosha, is all the emotions, memories, everything. Vijnanamaya kosha, I am the doer. I am this all these decision making, the prefrontal cortex, that belongs to the Vijnanamaya kosha. But here Shankaracharya is using kind of reversing it. Shankaracharya does all these things to highlight certain things. So my teacher, Swami Paramarthananda Saraswati, he says it's not clear why Shankaracharya is doing it, but he probably has some idea why he is doing it. Okay. Now we will go on to the next shloka. So far, is it clear? We are looking at all the upadhis, all the properties of the body, mind are getting transferred onto I, and that's all what's causing all the confusion. Rage cha sukha dukkadhi buddhau satyam pravartate sushuptau nasti tannashe tasmad buddhestu natmanah. Okay, now he's using a very logical analysis. So this logical analysis, it's given a name. It's called Anvaya Vyatireka. It's a very classical tool used especially in the Nyaya philosophy. Remember, we initially when we talked about the various philosophies, we talked about the Astika Darshanas. There is a Nyaya. Nyaya is the logic. Let's see if I have, yeah. So this is like the three pairs of sisters we saw. Nyaya and Vaisheshika. Logic and metaphysics, they're friendly sisters. They go hand in hand. So Vedanta uses all these analysis and logic from all these and creates the what's called a more superset of all this cogent, flowing theory behind all this. So in this shloka, we see raga. Raga means attachment. And Icha means desire. Sukham, pleasure. Dukkham, pain. All these adi, etc. Buddhau satyam pravartate. So all these are perceived to exist so long as buddhi function. Buddhau satyam means when the buddhi, when the intellect functions, that is when you are awake, or even in dream. Even in dream, intellect functions. Because they, even scientifically, they know that, looking at the prefrontal cortex. So they are perceived to exist so long as buddhi functions. So, buddhau satyam pravartate, as when the intellect functions. Sushuptau nasti tannashe. In sushupti means in deep sleep, when the buddhi, the intellect ceases to exist, they are not perceived. Can you perceive attachment, desire, pain, pleasure in deep sleep? No. Therefore, they belong to the buddhi alone, intellect alone, and not to the atma. The raga, dvesha are superimposed on the manomaya kosha, but here Shankaracharya switches. He puts it on the intellectual kosha, which is the Vijnanamaya kosha. So again, it's not very clear why Shankaracharya is doing this twist. Commonly, attachment, pleasure, pain belong to the manomaya kosha. It's the mind, emotions, not to the vijnanamaya kosha. But Shankaracharya is deliberately doing this twist, and there should be a reason behind it. My teacher said it's not very clear. Nobody knows why exactly he's done this twist. Okay, so now the Shankaracharya's answering a question of a Nyaya philosopher. According to the Nyaya philosophy, some people believe all this attachment, desire, pleasure, pain belong to the Atma. Here Shankaracharya refutes the Nyaya philosopher using the Anvaya Vyatireka method. So this one doesn't have a simile, one of the few shlokas without a simile, and it's considered a continuation of the previous shloka. So this previous shloka that we saw, it's considered a continuation of this. Due to ignorance, what belongs to the mind are superimposed on the Atma. So here he says, what belongs to the intellect is superimposed on the Atma. So, okay, now let's look at this method. So this is a classical tool used. Anvaya. So Anvaya Vyatireka is the method. Anvaya means co-presence. So consider smoke and fire. They coexist. So if there is smoke, there is fire. If there is fire, there is smoke. You can say, okay, there can be fire, smokeless fire, but there is some emissions there. So let's just, in those days, they saw a lot of things. So let's say there's fire, then there's smoke. When there's no fire, there's no smoke. So these two are each dependent on each other. So fire causes smoke, no fire, no smoke. Fire is the cause, smoke is the effect. Okay, so the Anvaya Vyatireka method is used in Nyaya and Mimamsa schools. It's a powerful method of inference, anumana, and discriminative reasoning used to determine cause-effect relationships. So similarly, in waking state, the body and the mind are present, and the Atma is present. In dream state, the body and the mind, the body is absent. You don't feel the body. Everything happens in the mind. Atma still present. In deep sleep, the body is absent. The mind is also absent. But the Atma is present. How do you know that? Because later, when you wake up, you say, I slept well. I feel refreshed. I slept well. So the blank mind is also witnessed by the Atma. When the buddhi is wakeful in Jagrat Swapna Avastha, then that is the waking and the dream state. Then desire, all these comes. Even in dream, desire is very active. Desire, aversion, fear, all those things are in dream also. So raga, ichcha, sukham, dukkham, all this is the anvaya. When buddhi is wakeful in the dream and the waking state, then you have all these qualities. When in Sushupta, the buddhi is resolved, that is, the intellect is resolved, we find all these emotions, raga, dvesha, they are not there. So this is called Vyatireka. And from this, we know that raga and dvesha belong to buddhi alone, like smoke belonging to fire alone. Smoke, fire is the cause, smoke is the effect. Like that, all these emotions like desire, fear, hatred, all those things belong to the buddhi alone and not to the Atma. So that is how Shankaracharya says, when the intellect, buddhi is absent, you don't see that. So this is a logical way of putting, okay, it doesn't belong to you. You are still there in deep sleep because you know you slept well. Okay. Prakashor kasyato yasya shaityam agneryatochnata swabhava satchidananda nitya nirmalatatmanaha. just as the luminosity is the nature of the sun, coolness is the nature of the water, and heat is the nature of the fire, so too the nature of Atma is Satchit Ananda Nitya Nirmala Atmanaha. So existence, consciousness, bliss. Usually only these three are taken to describe the Atma. Very important. This is not a property of the Atma. So property of the Atma means you're different. It's just an attribute, but you're different. If you say, okay, I am a tall person, or I am a teacher, then the property, one of your properties is you're a teacher, but there can be other things too. But this is the nature of the Atma. So, like the heat is the nature of the fire, existence, consciousness, bliss, eternity, and purity is the nature of the Atma. That is the Atma. So by definition, Atma doesn't have any property. You can see it is attributeless. It is just existence. It is conscious. It is bliss, and it's eternal, and it's pure. There are no blemishes on the Atma. Prakashaha. Arkaha means sun, Surya. Prakasha means luminosity. So sun's nature is luminosity. Toyam means water. Shaityam. So Shaityam means coolness. And Ushnam means heat. Agni is fire. Shaityam, Agner, Yata Ushnata, the heat belonging to the fire. Toyam Shaityam, coolness belonging to water. Swabhava, Satchidananda, the Atma Swabhava, or the nature of the Atma is existence, consciousness, bliss, eternity, and purity. So this existence part, I want to illustrate it once more. So consciousness, probably you all understand. Conscious, so Atma is that which gives consciousness, sentiency to all of us. We are a sentient object. The dog is also a sentient being. That it comes from the Atma. So that part is clear. And the bliss part also, somewhat it can be clear to you. Okay, the existence part may be a little tricky. So there I have to say, let's say you say, I am a teacher. Then the teacher is like an attribute. The Atma doesn't have any attributes. The teacher and all that belongs to the body, the mind, everything. The only attribute of the Atma is I am. That's all. That is what is called existence. The rest belong to the mind body. Is this aspect clear? So Atma's nature is existence. Yeah, everything else is a qualification. And since Atma doesn't have a property, you're superimposing the property of the body and mind on the Atma. Okay. So now the question may come, if the Atma is sullied during that superimposition, when the consciousness is there in the body, is this consciousness getting sullied by it? So our body is so dirty. There's all this, if you go inside, there's all this viscous buoys, fluid, everything. Is Atma getting sullied? Here Shankaracharya says, Atma Adyasa Atma, before the Adhyasa, Atma Shuddham. After the superimposition, Atma is Shuddham. Even during the superimposition, Atma is Shuddham. It's very pure. So Swabhava is the key word. Okay. So the purification, so the other question that may come here, Swamiji anticipates and clarifies. So the scriptures say, do karma yoga, do your asana practice, meditation for purification of the self. What purification is referred to here? It is the purification of the mind, not Atma. Atma is always pure. and that Atma is you. Okay, so essential nature of sun is luminosity, water is coolness, um, and fire is heat. That of Atma is existence, consciousness, bliss, eternity, and purity. Okay, now comes the birth of the ego. Very important point. Who is the knower? When you say, I know, I am a knowledgeable person, I have a great mind. Who is the knower? How that happens? Very, very, very important point. Atmana Satchidam Shashya Buddhir Vrittiritidvayam Samyojya cha vivekena Janamiti pravartate. Atmanaha Satchida Amsha, which means the nature, the existence consciousness aspect of the self, by the indiscriminative blending of the two. What are the two? Dvayam means the two. What are the two that are indiscriminately blended? So samyojya avivekenya. Samyojya means total blending. Avivekena. What kind of blending is this? This is the indiscriminate blending of the two, the existence consciousness aspect of the self and the thought wave of the intellect. Bodher vritti. So this is the vritti is the important point. All these are like waves coming in the mind. Okay, any thought is a wave. The notion is also a wave. Sometimes you get asserted, I am this great person. How dare this person talks to me like that? So that is, it's also a wave. The ahankara, that's also a buddher vritti. It is a wave in the intellect. Then what? By the indiscriminate blending of the existence consciousness aspect of the self and the thought wave of the intellect, there arises the notion of I know. Janami iti pravartate. This arises. What arises? Janami. I know. The sense that I know arises. This I know is an illusion. The mistaken identification leads the jiva to say, I know, I think, I enjoy. In truth, the self never changes. It only witnesses. The knowing happens in the intellect, powered by the reflected consciousness. It is mistakenly attributed to I, the jiva. So, who is the knower and where does the knowing take place? Okay. So, I will straight away go to the example and then we will come to the next. The shloka continues in the next one also. And let me do the shloka also, because the example will make it very things, everything clear. So you're saying now the confusion you as people who are studying this would be having is Atma provides consciousness. The buddhi is the medium in which all this thing is happening. So who is the knower? That is the question. That's a golden question. So let's look at the next shloka also. Atmano vikriya nasti buddhir bodho na jatviti jiva sarpamalam nyatva nyata drashteti mukhyati. The Atma has no modification. Atma doesn't change. Now, after you know something, you are a different person. Do you agree with me or not? Yes. So, but Atma doesn't have any modification. It's just unchanging time eternally. Therefore, Atma cannot be the knower. Because if Atma knows, it will be a different person. It will be a different entity. The intellect is inert. It has no capacity to know. It is just like a tool. But the jiva, not knowing, sarvam alam jnatva, jiva, not knowing all this, jnata drashteti mukhyati, thinks that he or she is the seer, and the jiva refers to this entity, the us, each is a jiva. So that is how the jiva is deluded. We are deluded and we face all the suffering because we think we know, we don't know, all that stuff. We enjoy, we don't enjoy. The Atma does not have any modification. Therefore, Atma cannot be a knower. Jnata, Buddhi does not have any Chaitanyam. Buddhi has no sentiency on its own. It is because of the Atma reflecting. We saw that in the movie theater example. The light, let me go to the movie theater example. It is in the mind, the light from the screen, the projector lamp is like the Atma. We have this thing. The projector lamp is like the Atma. The reflection on the screen, that's the reflected consciousness. That is where everything is happening. Okay. So the Atmanaha Vikriya Nasti, there is no modification for the Atma. Buddhir Bodho na Jatviti, the intellect has no capacity. Bodha means capacity to know. Buddhi does not have the capacity to know because it is inert. Jivaha Sarvam Alam Nyatva, not Sarvam Alam, it is Sarvam Alam Nyatva. So Jivaha Sarvam Alam Nyatva, Jiva not knowing all this things, Nyata, Drashta, and Muhyati. So it thinks it is the seer and the knower, and it is deluded. So the example is the apple sorting machine. Okay. Oh, sorry. I should have clicked on this one. Okay. So Atmano Vikriya Nasti. There is no modification for the Atma. Buddhir Bodho na Jatviti. The intellect has no capacity to know. Jivaha Sarvam Alam Nyatva. Not knowing all this, it thinks it is the knower, it is the drashta, the seer, and it is deluded. Okay. Now look at the apple sorting machine. The whole thing is a computer. It has a camera and it sees which apples are good and it sorts them accordingly. Good apples go into a good pile, the bad apples are rejected. Okay. What is powering all this? It is the electricity. The electricity is like the Atma. That is the real you. The entire machine is inert. It can do nothing. Without the electricity, the whole thing is inert. So the intellect, the apple sorting machine is like the apple sorting machine. Both cannot sort on its own. Can you say, tell the electricity to do the sorting? No. Right? Similarly, you cannot say that you are the knower. It requires you are only the consciousness. This body, which is not you, is needed, just as we saw in the movie theater example. It is this reflection, the light which is falling on the screen, that is kind of illuminating everything, and the entire knowing process takes place. Okay, so this is a very important point. So and Shankaracharya, so the apple sorting example is I gave the modern day example. People give many examples, but in the olden days they had the other examples. So Shankaracharya in the 25th sloka talks about the indiscriminate blending. That's the problem. So knowing implies change. Atma is changeless, therefore it cannot belong to the Atma. Buddhi is achetanatvat. There's no consciousness in the buddhi. Apple sorting machine itself cannot do anything without electricity. A jnani, a wise person, will never say, I know. Jnani will say, I am the witness of the vrittis. I mean, they don't have to tell this out loud, but this is how they would think. I am the witness of the thought modifications of the mind. Vritti is a thought modification. The other example is like the bulb. The bulb itself is inert, and the light in the filament, it is like a vritti, a thought pattern. So electricity is like the Atma. Okay. Example number 2. When you heat a iron ball in a high heat in a fire, the ball glows. So the luminosity of the ball is like the vritti, a thought. The vritti is where the knowing takes place. Just like when you project the movie onto the screen, that's everything becomes clear. That is where it takes knowing takes place, not on the film. So in the movie theater example again, it is not on the film, it is not on the light doesn't know. When the whole thing is projected, when things start moving, knowing happens. Similarly, here also, the luminosity of the ball, that is like a vritti, a thought modification. That is where knowing happens. Okay, we saw the movie theater example. So this is a very important point. I hope it is clear. Yeah. Okay. I think people are still contemplating this. Okay. We have 4 more minutes. We'll go to the next shloka. Okay. Now, fear. So all our situation, there's a lot of fear in us, right? Um, and Shankaracharya says that the cause is this wrong identification. So the classic example in Vedanta is mistaking a rope for a snake. So a coiled, a rope, this looks like a snake. In dark, people used to mistake a rope for a snake and get frightened. Rajju sarpavadatmanam jivam nyatva bhayam vahet naham jivah paratmeti nyataschenirpayo bhavet. Rajju sarpam. Rajju refers to a rope. Sarpam refers to a snake. Rajju sarpavat atmanam, just as mistaking for a rope for a snake. Jivam nyatva bhayam vahet, results in fear. So too, considering oneself as a jiva. Jivam nyatva, considering oneself as a jiva, results in fear. When you're thinking of ourselves as this limited individual, results in fear. Na aham jiva, but when one realizes, I am not the jiva, I am Paramatma, I am the Paramatma, Nyata, Nirbhayo Bhavet, one becomes Nirbhayaha, which means fearless. When one knows their true bigger nature, one becomes fearless. So that is the gist of this shloka. Then आत्मावभासयत् एकः बुद्ध्यादीन् इन्द्रियाणि हि धीपो घटादिवत् स्वात्मा जटैस्तैर्नापभास्यते. Atma avabhasayat ekaha. Avabhasayati ekaha. The self alone illuminates. Ekaha means it alone, the self. Atma, the self. Avabhasati means illuminates. The self alone illuminates. What all does it illuminate? Buddhi adini indriyani hi. It illuminates the intellect, and also verily, he means verily, also verily the senses, just as a lamp by itself illuminates pots, etc., and these are inert. These means like the pot, the senses, intellect, they're all inert, and they cannot illumine anything, including the Atma. So it is the Atma which illuminates all. Like the example used is a pot. A pot example is used here. Like a lamp illuminating objects like a pot, Atma illuminates everything. But can a pot illumine the Atma? No, it is inert. Similarly, intellect cannot illumine the Atma. That is the subtle message he's trying to say. The pot can illuminate the Atma, but the intellect, the pot cannot the Atma can illuminate the pot, but the pot cannot illumine the Atma. The other example we've seen is this light. So you see, you have a mirror and you have another mirror reflecting. So all these are various portions of the mind, right? So light comes from the window. By tilting the mirror, you can illuminate the entire room. Like that, various portions of the mind you can illuminate by so the mind itself is like a movable mirror. It can cast light on different things by moving. But can this mirror be used to illumine the sun? No. The mirror can illumine the room because it is dark. It is a joke to say that the mirror can illumine the sun. So next question is, who is going to illumine the Atma if it is not the intellect? So this is answered in Shloka 29, but we will stop here.